Nothing changes while your gaze remains the same. And maybe that's why, despite so many attempts, your reality still feels frozen in time. You wake up early, meditate, do affirmations, read books. Sometimes you even change cities, jobs, relationships. But something inside stays the same, as if life has gone in giant circles, only to bring you back to the same point. The same emptiness, the same effort, the same almost. Could it be because you're still looking through the same old eyes? It's unsettling to realize that even the most intense change may not touch the essential. Because what truly transforms reality isn't how much you do, but what you see while doing it. There are people who experience miracles in the midst of chaos, and others who feel lost even when surrounded by blessings. What sets one apart from the other isn't what happens on the outside, but the silent lens observing everything from within. Maybe no one has ever told you this, but your world doesn't respond to what you wish for. It responds to what you observe. And if your observation is trapped in fear, in scarcity, in resistance, you can chase peace your whole life and still only see conflict. Today we'll touch that blind spot, the invisible gap between intention and reality. And what you're about to discover might realign everything, because when you change the way you look, what once seemed impossible begins to bloom. Have you ever asked yourself why, even when doing everything right, your life keeps spinning in the same cycles? It's subtle, and at the same time, brutal, to realize that your efforts haven't been useless, just insufficient. Not because you haven't tried hard enough, but because maybe you're trying to change the world without changing the lens through which you see it. Imagine watching the same movie every single day. The scenes are familiar, the lines predictable, and even if you change the couch, adjust the lighting in the room, memorize the script or understand the characters better, the storyline stays the same. So does the ending, and no matter how hard you try to feel something new, everything carries that worn-out déjà vu flavor. That's how many people live, rushing to change the setting, forgetting that they're still watching the same story, with the same eyes. Maybe you've been through this. You change relationships, but the emotional pain repeats. Move to a new city, but the sense of emptiness returns. Start new projects, but the same old fear of failure still lurks. It's as if reality is just a different sequence of the same internal script. The truth is that external reality isn't a series of random events. It's a response, a resonance, to the field you maintain inside. And that field is deeply influenced by your observation. The way you see the world creates a filter that selects, distorts, and reinforces everything that comes your way. And that filter isn't in the world. It's in your mind, in your emotional body, in your vibrational history. It's the invisible lens that shapes your experiences. People who live in constant alertness tend to perceive threats even where there's safety. People vibrating in scarcity see lack even when surrounded by opportunity. Not because the world is cruel, but because the mind tries to validate what it already knows, what has already hurt, what once felt true, and got stored as reference. And here lies the most delicate point. You can change your actions, your routine, your goals, but if your gaze is still tied to old references of pain, loss, and inadequacy, your field of manifestation will keep spinning in circles. It's the old program running on a new system. It's the past dictating how the present is perceived. That's why so many people feel stuck, trapped, like they're pushing life forward with great effort but seeing no return. And maybe it's exactly because they're pushing when what reality is actually asking for is a shift in focus, a pause in doing, to revisit observing. Look at this sincerely. When you look at your life, what are you reinforcing the most? The absence or the presence? What's still missing? Or what's already aligning? The repetition or the small transformations that are quietly appearing? If your observation is conditioned by lack, everything you do will be filtered through that frequency. It's like watering a plant while secretly believing it won't grow. The external action exists, but the vibration behind it is in denial. And that's where actions lose their power. Because deep down, the universe doesn't respond to what you're doing, but to the frequency you hold while doing it. It's vibrational coherence that activates the flow, not a checklist. And that coherence only arises when the gaze changes, when the lens interpreting the facts aligns with what the heart truly longs to live. So maybe it's not about trying harder, but about seeing from a new place. Because as long as the lens stays the same, the movie will keep playing the same story, and everything around you will remain a reflection of what you've yet to dare transform within. There's something silent and immensely powerful operating between your desire and your reality, something that can't be seen with the eyes, but that shapes everything you live. That something is your observation. Yes, the way you observe, the inner field that supports your gaze, is a language, a vibration, an invisible command. It's through this subtle frequency that the universe hears you. And no, it doesn't hear your words. It hears your state, the quality of your presence, what vibrates even when you're silent. The great confusion for many begins here. To deeply desire something and believe that desire alone should be enough to create change. But the universe doesn't respond to intellectualized desire. It doesn't move by ideas. It moves by vibrational coherence. And your vibration most of the time doesn't come from what you want, but from how you observe. You may say you want peace, but if your gaze rests every day on absence, on others' flaws, on fear of the future, the dominant vibration will be tension. You may want abundance, but if you observe life through the lens of comparison, excessive effort, the constant sense of not having enough, the frequency you emit will be scarcity. You may wish to be loved, but if what you observe most are past rejections and small signs of distance, your field will organize itself around lack. It's painful to recognize this, because it requires you to look at the gap between what you want and what you vibrate, between what you affirm and what you observe. And this is one of the most liberating points on the journey of awareness. Realizing that reality isn't denying you anything. It's simply being faithful to the reflection you're projecting onto it. Your observation creates a field of expectation, and this field is magnetic. It attracts not what you want, but what you hold as emotional truth. The way you observe the world is like an energetic mirror. The more you focus on something, the more it expands. Not because it's more real, but because your attention is feeding it. And everything that is fed by your gaze gains strength in your experience. Think about how many times you've caught yourself expecting something to go wrong, even when everything seemed fine. That silent waiting is hidden observation, an unconscious vibrational command saying, "This won't last, something will fail, at some point I'll be let down." And even if you wish for the opposite, the field has already been shaped, the frequency already emitted, and the universe responds. Maybe that's why so many people are exhausted, because they're trying to manifest a new life with the same old gaze. And the old gaze carries stories, beliefs, traumas, judgments, and all that baggage seeps into the now, distorting the present through lenses that belong to the past. Observation is like a spiritual language few have learned to hear. It doesn't speak in sentences, but in focus, in presence, in silence. It tells the universe where your inner truth lies. And that truth, even if it clashes with your desires, becomes the foundation for the reality that unfolds around you. That's why, when you change your observation, everything changes, not immediately on the outside, but deeply within. And this inner realignment begins to generate new frequencies, new choices, new possibilities. You start to see what used to go unnoticed, begin to perceive signals where before there was only noise. Begin to feel the presence of something greater, not because the universe changed, but because your focus opened to another layer of reality. This is the hidden key, the bridge between the invisible and the visible, between desire and manifestation. You don't need to wish harder, you just need to observe more clearly. And clarity doesn't come from control, it comes from stillness, from the internal space where the old stories no longer scream so loudly, and where the now can finally be seen for what it is, The way you observe the world is shaping the path you call destiny. What you're focusing on in this moment is being programmed to repeat. And maybe now, you're beginning to see that it's not life that insists on being the same. It's your gaze that has yet to be rewritten. Sometimes what holds us back the most isn't reality itself, but the way the mind insists on interpreting what happens. And that insistence isn't rational. It's automatic. It's like an old trail, repeated so many times that it became the default path, even when it no longer leads anywhere. The human mind was programmed to conserve energy. And to do so, it automates perceptions, judgments, and conclusions. This means that many times, you're not really seeing the present. You're just reliving the past with new colors. Different situations, but the same interpretation. New possibilities, seen through old filters. That's where the cycle begins. The silent repetition that shapes your days with invisible patterns. You think you're reacting to the now, but you're actually responding to what your mind has trained as likely reality. And it doesn't seek what is truest, it seeks what is most familiar, because the familiar feels safe, even when it hurts. Think about this. How many times have you noticed yourself feeling the same emotion again? The same kind of frustration, the same fear, the same sense of inadequacy, as if it were stronger than you. As if no matter how hard you tried to change, something inside was still stuck in that reaction. That something is the unconscious programming that sustains your observation. It's the forgotten, almost invisible lens that distorts everything that comes your way. And the subtlest thing about this lens is that it doesn't scream. It simply reinforces. It silently confirms the beliefs you carry without noticing. The mind looks for patterns, and once it finds one, it repeats it like a conditioned reflex. If at some point you believed you weren't enough, that you weren't seen, that you were rejected, that information became a lens. And from that lens, everything you observe tends to validate that feeling. Even when reality is offering something new, your gaze can't receive it. Because the filter distorts. Because the program is still active. That's why so many transformations don't seem to last. Because what changes on the outside is still being observed through the same old logic. The new experience arrives, but it's interpreted with the old codes, and the cycle starts again. Nothing really changes while the observer remains the same. It takes courage to stop and ask yourself, what have I been observing so frequently that it's already become a truth inside me? Where is my emotional focus? What stories does my mind repeat as if they were absolute facts? This question isn't meant to provoke guilt, but to open space. Because once you begin to realize what you've been sustaining with your attention, you also begin to reclaim your power of choice. Yes, you can choose. You can choose to observe differently. You can interrupt the cycle. You can, with presence and gentleness, change the lens. But that doesn't happen through force. It happens through awareness, through silence, through that moment when you notice the trigger, and instead of reacting as usual, you breathe, observe, feel, and let it pass. Conscious observation is the beginning of liberation, and observing is not about distancing yourself from emotions, it's about welcoming them without identifying with them. It's realizing that you are not the fear, nor the lack, nor the pattern. You are the one watching it all unfold. And because of that, you can choose differently. Maybe right now you're feeling the echo of these words within you. And if you are, that's already a sign that the lens has begun to shift. Because once consciousness expands, it doesn't go back to the same place. And the simple fact that you're here at this point may already be breaking the cycle. Now it's up to you. If this message resonated in your heart, like this video, and write in the comments, "I'm ready to rewrite my gaze." That's more than a phrase. It's a silent commitment to your new frequency. And when you write it, you declare it. And when you declare it, the field begins to reorganize. Because you, the observer, are repositioning yourself. And that changes everything. There comes a moment when awareness alone is no longer enough. It needs to be sustained. Because even consciousness, if not cultivated, evaporates. The old mind is persistent. The pattern is efficient. It knows how to return, how to seduce, how to convince you that nothing has changed. That's why a single moment of clarity isn't enough. You have to create a field, a vibrational space where the new can truly take root. And that field is born from conscious repetition, from silent practice that turns your gaze into fertile ground. It all starts with vigilance. Not rigid, anxious vigilance that tries to control every thought, but soft, steady, present attention. Like someone walking through a dark forest holding a lantern, not to judge the darkness, but to know where they're stepping. That light is your presence, and it needs to be turned on every day. Upon waking, even before habitual thoughts take form, there's a sacred instant, a gap between sleep and doing, where the subconscious is still open. That's the moment you can choose the tone of your day, not with lists or promises, but with focus, with vibrational intention, with real gratitude, even for something small. A deep breath, a ray of sunlight through the window, a silence that does not judge. That first morning gaze begins to reshape your field, but as the day goes on, the challenge grows. The old mind returns, the automatic reactions reappear, the old stories try to take control again. And that's when a point of choice shows up. That split second of pause where you can ask yourself, what I'm thinking, feeling, or saying, is it bringing me closer to or further from what I want to experience? This question doesn't require a rational answer. It requires a return to the body, to the heart, to feeling. Because the truth of your vibration isn't in the argument, but in the frequency your field is holding. And when you start making that inner adjustment, sometimes in silence, sometimes in the middle of chaos, something realigns. Small choices become big realities, because the field responds. At the end of the day, instead of just reviewing what went wrong, what was missing, what still needs to be resolved, return to observing what came into harmony, what flowed, what brought a sense of ease, even if subtle. This practice isn't about denying what hurt. It's about not allowing the pain to be the only narrative, because the field feeds on what you nourish with your attention. And when that nourishment becomes daily, observation changes. You stop being a prisoner of impulses and become the guardian of your own frequency. The universe doesn't demand perfection. It responds to consistency, to the vibration that repeats with coherence, even in small doses. And when you begin to choose to see what is in harmony, instead of reinforcing day after day what is out of alignment, your field begins to reprogram itself. Reality changes first in the details, in the answers that once wouldn't come, in the unexpected encounters, in the pauses that bring relief, in the way you respond to what used to destabilize you. Not as if a miracle happened, but as if, for the first time, reality was truly listening to you. And it is. Because now, the one observing is you. Not the pattern anymore, not the trauma, not the old script that always narrated the same lines. You've created a new field, a field that doesn't depend on control, but on coherence, on presence, on choices made with an awakened heart. And that changes everything. Little by little, the world begins to respond to you differently, not because it changed on its own, but because you looked at it with new eyes, sustained the vibration long enough for it to become reality, and life simply mirrored that. This is the power of conscious observation, the silent practice that slowly rewrites the way the universe organizes itself around you. Because now, it's no longer responding to your past, it's responding to your state. And that is presence in motion. It is manifestation as a natural consequence of a field that has finally learned to bloom. Sometimes, all that's missing is a step to the side, a slight shift in perspective, a subtle change in the place from which you observe. Because as long as the angle stays the same, the landscape, no matter how much it changes, will keep conveying the same feeling. Life is not static, but your gaze can be. And when that happens, you begin to see repetition where there is movement, problems where there's only learning, stagnation where, in truth, the field is merely asking for a new interpretation. Think of a mountain. When you're at the base, the path seems dense, confusing, limited. You can only see the nearby obstacles, the rocks, the incline, the sweat. But as you climb, something changes. The view starts to open. The same trail that once felt suffocating now reveals itself as part of a much greater whole. The effort still exists, but now it carries meaning. And meaning changes everything. What once seemed like an end becomes a transition. What once seemed like a mistake reveals a lesson. What once seemed like a prison was only a season. Changing the angle is just that. It's not forcing artificial positivity or denying difficult emotions. It's welcoming everything with more internal space. It's allowing the same fact to be seen from a higher place, where judgment gives way to understanding, and resistance dissolves into lucid acceptance. But that doesn't happen automatically. It requires presence. It requires choice. And the choice begins with an honest question. What is this experience trying to show me that I haven't yet been able to see? This question has the power to crack open dark places. It doesn't demand an immediate answer, but opens space for meaning to reveal itself in layers. It's like gradually lighting up a room that's always been locked. What was once shadow begins to take shape, begins to breathe. When you change the angle, life responds differently. Because your vibration stops being a fight against what is and becomes a conversation with what could be. It doesn't mean settling. It means interpreting with wisdom, allowing your emotional field to reorganize not around lack, but around openness, around possibility, around the frequency that aligns with what you wish to experience, even if it hasn't materialized yet. Changing the angle also means realizing that behind every pain, there's a call for expansion. Something in you is being invited to grow beyond the known. Sometimes life needs to break what was comfortable, so the soul can breathe again. And when you look from that place, the suffering doesn't vanish, but it begins to make sense. Because even the most challenging experiences carry seeds of realignment, and those seeds only sprout when your observation shifts focus. When instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you allow yourself to ask, "What is this experience calling me toward?" At that point, reality is no longer an enemy, but a compassionate mirror, not a mirror that judges, a mirror that reveals, that shows you where resistance still exists, where the lens is still foggy, where the observer is still clinging to what no longer serves. And in that silent recognition, the true shift happens. Because you stop trying to change the world through effort and begin allowing it to reorganize around your new vibration. The external reality is just a temporary reflection of your most stable vibration. And when that vibration rises, not through force, but through repositioning, the field begins to attract experiences that support that new state. You no longer have to chase. The answers begin to come to you. Synchronicities become more frequent. The flow begins to move. All of this because you changed the angle. Maybe what you've been searching for all these years was right beside you all along, but your gaze was fixed in the wrong place. In scarcity, in fear, in the old story. And now, as you change the lens, reality begins to show a different face, clearer, more fluid, more aligned with your truth. That's when the quiet magic happens. When you realize you don't need big events to change your life. You just need to reposition your gaze, and the world responds. There comes a moment when you must stop and ask, how long will my destiny be just a repetition of my old gaze? Many people believe destiny is a fixed line, a path already drawn, with little room for change. But that belief comes from a time when the power of consciousness wasn't understood. The power of presence, the power of sustained vibration. Today, we know that destiny isn't something that happens to you. It's something that happens through you. It's not fixed, it's vibrational. It shapes itself as you change your vibrational signature, And that signature is born largely from how you observe life. Your gaze is more than perception. It's a bridge. It connects the invisible to the visible. It's through your inner gaze that you translate the quantum field of infinite possibilities into a single lived reality. You choose. Even without realizing it, you choose at every moment which version of the world will be activated by your consciousness. And this isn't mysticism, it's physics applied to the soul. The quantum field doesn't respond to your anxiety or your disconnected desires. It responds to the coherence between what you feel, think, and consistently observe. Reality is collapsed, not by wishing, but by the vibrational frequency you hold, even in silence. And that frequency is deeply shaped by your inner lens. As long as you observe the world through the lens of fear, control, and lack, your destiny will take shape from that. Not as punishment, but as reflection. External reality reflects what your field has already decided is true. It doesn't matter how much you say you want something different. If your gaze isn't reprogrammed, your future will keep resembling your past. That's why reprogramming your gaze is rewriting your destiny. It's reclaiming the power of choice that was previously on autopilot. It's realizing that life isn't against you. It's the observer who's still tied to the lens of pain. And until that lens is updated, the cycle repeats. This process requires more presence than effort. It's not about changing everything at once. It's about sustaining a new frequency long enough for it to become your new normal. At first it feels strange. It feels slow. But there's something in you, something deeper, that recognizes this path as true. It's the part of your consciousness that already knows. You're not here to survive an imposed reality. You're here to awaken to your power to consciously co-create what resonates with your soul. You are not the story you were told, not the narrative that repeated itself for years. You are the space between thoughts, the presence behind the eyes. The observer who can, at any moment, choose a new internal reference point, and that choice, when made truthfully, begins to unravel the invisible threads that kept the old destiny spinning in circles. The field reorganizes. Reality, once dense, begins to open clearings. And time, which always seemed scarce, becomes an ally. You realize you no longer need to rush, because you're in sync with the flow. And flow is not haste. It's alignment. Reprogramming the gaze is also an act of courage. Courage to release the old identity. Courage to stop seeing yourself as someone who merely reacts to the world, and begin seeing yourself as someone who influences it. Courage to silence the mental noise and trust the wisdom that emerges from the space between thoughts. Destiny is not a fixed path. It's a response. And when you change the question your field is emitting, the answer inevitably changes. Maybe now you're beginning to feel this not just with your mind, but with your body, with your heart, with that subtle intuition that says something is realigning, something is coming home, and that something is you. Not the fragmented, tired, conditioned version, but the conscious one, the one who observes with presence, who chooses with clarity, who vibrates with truth. You are not at the mercy of what was. You stand before the opportunity to vibrate what could be. And when that vibration stabilizes, destiny is no longer a mystery. It's a clean mirror, a reflection of your new choice. The way you observe shapes the life you live, and maybe everything that seemed blocked, stagnant, or out of reach was only waiting for your new gaze. Because when the lens changes, the field changes, and what once seemed impossible begins to reveal itself with ease. Today, you don't need to do more. You only need to allow the new to be seen. Your destiny isn't out there. It lies in how you choose to observe the now. So try for 24 hours to sustain a new lens, one that sees with more presence, more space, more truth. And if you've made it this far, write in the comments, "My gaze is already rewriting my path." That way I'll know this message echoed within you. Because in the end, it's not the world that needs to change. It's the awakened gaze that transforms everything, from the inside out, from you to infinity.